Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
All right, Corey, you stirred some stuff up on Twitter a couple weeks back after you came across.
I did nothing of the sort. I'm not a pot stirrer.
You are the pot stirrer.
Okay. I asked a... This is one time that I actually didn't mean to. I was legitimately asking a question.
It's been a long time since we've talked markets on our podcast.
Yeah.
We haven't had... we had a lot of fall harvest in the middle of a lot of these recordings. We were definitely focused on making sure that we could take care of the family farms, but we're back, going to get some more regular, more timely content out. So we're looking forward to this conversation around what do we do with that crop now that it's been harvested, and what should we have been doing maybe before we had harvested it. We got a lot of things to discuss today.
Yeah, and I have this conversation all the time. Us as farmers have so many things on our plate. And it's not an excuse. That's what we signed up for, right? We're the marketer. We're the person out doing the tillage, planting the seed, harvesting the crop, trucking the grain, doing the books. Quite frankly, it's like marketing should be one of the most forefront things that we do, but it's one of the hardest because it's the most emotional. And so I think we could talk about marketing every show and probably never come to the same conclusion.
Well, it's a good thing that we have an emotionless Andrew here with us. Okay. That wasn't fair.
No.
That wasn't fair. But we do. We have Andrew Kabes here. He is with Lighthouse Commodities, Chief Operating Officer, which he says the title is more a glorified title than it is what he does in the day-to-day. So I'm excited to meet you, Andrew. Welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Like I said, we're not big on titles there, but I guess somebody's got to have one, right? My day-to-day is I manage a farm marketing role with about 35 farmer clients, primarily based across most of North Dakota, a few scattered throughout South Dakota, and do a few allied work with my in-laws there in Nebraska and stuff. But basically, we're the easy way to say it is we're a professional merchant for hire. Like you alluded to, you guys in the production space have so many things coming at you every given day, and we model our business on, just like you hire a lawyer, a CPA. We're the guys that are in it every day, doing what needs to be done, understanding your operations, and then helping make those decisions, bring it back to you and say, hey, 5-minute phone call, we need to do this and this today. And it's done and taken care of instead of, oh man, I spent 6 hours working on that planter last night and beans are down 40 cents today. I should have probably done something,
Those are the funnest days where you just pay attention and you look and you're like, oh, I just had a crap day and not just icing on the cake.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's what we do that's what I do in a 30-second elevator speech type of what we're up to. And for all the guys that we work with, we got about 140 clients today. I mean, it's just a peace of mind thing. And we've got guys that have, almost have never forward contracted a bushel in their life. They've been a cash seller their whole life, just sell it off the combine to actually, we've had some pretty sophisticated guys sign up with us, but they just, large operators, they just don't want the stress of having to pay attention to that piece of the world and, hand it off to us on that front. So,
okay. I want to first ask Corey, though, how would you spell Kabes?
Kabes.
Oh, bull crap. That's the only time the outlines ever helped you.
that is the truth right there. That is not how I would have spelled Kabes, but where does that come from?
That is a Czech name.
Kabes.
That's
Kabes. Andrew Kabes.
Back in the day when you got telemarketer calls, on your landline, was a really easy way to determine if somebody actually knew you, because it was, hey, is Mr. Kabes? You're like, nope, not here. It's a very Czech name from northeast Nebraska. A small town, Clarkson, is where my dad grew up, and I'm sure there's harder ones in the neighborhood up there.
I thought I had it bad with Hillabo. That was the same way. My parents, if they didn't say it right, it's click, But now we just got rid of the landline, so and the phones screen the calls for you.
Right. Yeah, but now I get the text. Now I get
you do
spam text.
I signed up for something a few years ago, and I never get that. I haven't got a political text for years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Figure out what it was, and then I can see if I can.
It was
sign
some
up for
website. You just sign up, and they don't.
My phone just puts it right in a spam folder, so it doesn't even. Yeah,
okay.
So.
He doesn't have an iPhone.
I got an Android. I know. Don't.
That's fancy. I know. My dad's got one of those too. So they're nice phones.
But before you got to Lighthouse, you had some unique background that really probably gave you some perspective, gave you some insight as to how the whole market works.
Yeah, for sure. So graduate, for what it's worth, graduated Lincoln, UNL, 07. Started right out of college with the Schooler Company, who's based out of Omaha, nationwide presence. Spent a little time out in Ogden, Utah, very briefly out there, but then pretty much the rest of my time in the commercial grain world was either out in western Nebraska, Sidney, Nebraska, and Venango, Nebraska, if you want to pull the map out at some point and find those fine locations. But
doing it right now.
But that gave me a great learning experience, and Schooler was a type of company where you learned on your feet. You just went to it. You had some guidance, but you just kind of figured it out. And I think that in the grain industry, there's nothing that is better than just straight experience. I mean, just every year, every day is different, and every producer you deal with, every problem you have, so that set me up very well to understand how merchandising commercial grain works. Venango at the time when we were there, and I still think is probably close to record. And I think it was 11 and 12. We loaded like 111 and 102 shuttles out of that single facility out in western Nebraska in those years. So
how much is a shuttle?
being shuttle be 440,000 bushels.
Yeah.
We were moving 45 to 50 million bushels through those facilities in a year, and it was ops people, 2 full-time merchants, and a few trainees. Pretty much ran the whole show. So. You definitely got to experience very independent, but it was also just you couldn't ask for a better way to then vault to where I'm at today, where you can you're the producer's advocate, so somebody on the commercial side maybe is doing something that I wouldn't say they do something wrong, but you just how they think versus how maybe the producer thinks or whatever. So.
Did you go to college knowing you wanted to be in grain?
Yeah, I honestly probably until my junior year I was kind of on ag business banking track, and then actually ended up been my spring of my junior year had an internship with ADM in Lincoln at the bean plant there, and I was like, yeah, this is not bad. And then the Schooler actually at that point was growing, and they had really not had much of a trainee program. And then that, like 06, 07 was one of their first trainee years. And so I was able to join them right out of college in their trainee program. And then that junior summer actually had an internship with them that then led to a full-time position straight out of college. So, it's, looking back, I think I probably would have been a little bored sitting at a bank every day looking at financials. I mean, I enjoy that part of the world, but it's not, elevator business, commodities. I mean, there's not a day that the board, well, I shouldn't say there's never a day, but rarely do you have a corn board that's unchanged on that day, so, and just trying to put the puzzle pieces together and every day when you're in the grain industry.
Yeah. So do you hear that, kids? If you go to college, if you choose to go to college, take your internships.
It's true.
Study abroad. Do all the things that you might not want to do because it's important.
Scary.
You not only do you get to decide and find out what you like to do, but you get to decide and find out what you don't like to do. Mm-hmm. And I use that tremendously. I was glad that I did that because I could have ended up in a wrong path. Worse than I am now.
I even interned in a large swine unit during my college years, and was even potentially looking at that path at one
If
point.
I would have done that, I probably wouldn't have hogs now.
But yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe.
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 All right. So then you also do a little bit of production side yourself. So you've got
Yeah.
your finger in all the buckets.
Yeah, I can take this hat off, put the other producer hat on, and not huge acres out in central Nebraska where my mom's side of the family grew up at. We have some ground out there, and then we also run some lease cows with a gentleman out in southwest Nebraska. And then we usually feed those calves out every year at a feed yard in central Nebraska. So you can feel both sides. It's hey, I need to get fertilizer bought here. Looks like a good number. While we're telling everybody else to sell new crop corn, I should probably be doing it myself. Type of thing. And
Okay, so you've got somebody here that has grain merchandising background, works commodity side, advising background, and is a producer hat. So where do you want to start with what we're going to learn today?
Oh, man. Let's just go to Lighthouse Commodities. Just general, where are you based out of? I know you said you work up in the North Dakota quite a bit, but sounds like a lot of, you said Nebraska quite a bit.
Yeah, so actually, just my in-laws in Nebraska.
Okay.
On one more personal note, married my wife. We live in Deschler, Nebraska. She farms with her family. She would be fourth generation. Our kids, if they decide to want to come back, would be fifth generation cow calf and irrigated row crop enterprise there. In fact, they feed all their calves all the way to finish. Members of U.S. Premium Beef, some of the founding members of that. So kind of a unique story there. So
Very cool.
not a lot of operations like that that are all the way through and have done that for years. But back to Lighthouse Commodities. Founded, we just passed our eighth anniversary. Dave Speckler, who's the president of the company, had worked with, there's two larger ethanol plants up in North Dakota, the Blue Flint and Dakota Spirit plants, and he was risk manager for those plants for, I believe, around 8 years prior to starting Lighthouse. And, he just saw, similar that I saw in the commercial side, just all the things that producers do that, you can't stop a guy from doing it, but you go, gosh, there's got to be a better way for a producer to, merchandise their grain every year. And so Dave started the company. I joined in late 2017. And at that point, we had about 150,000 acres under management, mostly in North Dakota. And today we're about 750,000 acres, mostly North Dakota. We have started to push into South Dakota. The one thing about our model is we're very high touch. We only probably work with 30 to 35 clients per farm market. We have 5 farm marketers, including myself, and we physically trade the grain. So a lot of brokers, you might have a futures account relationship with somebody or whatever, but we are actually your pseudo grain elevator. We're guys write your physical HTA contracts, basis contracts with us. We pay out grain proceeds to them just like a regular elevator. Now, all that filters back to their final destination. Now, obviously, North Dakota, it's a little different than Iowa or Illinois, where you got to here you've got an end user every 10 miles, and up there, you've got, sometimes the best market's 400 miles away. In fact, we have trade a fairly large deck of corn into the southern prairie provinces, into Saskatchewan, Manitoba, quite a few hog mills up there. And so we're making markets up there and stuff like that for our customers. But,
That's fascinating that you could go 400 miles and it be the better option.
Yeah. I got so many questions. Is North Dakota just the most opportunity because of that? Like you say, down here we have an end user every 10 miles. For me, it's 25 miles one way or 41 another way.
It's really interesting because I think everybody, I don't know if you've spent any time in North Dakota. If you haven't, I encourage a guy to don't go up there in the winter necessarily. But
I was waiting. I was getting ready
I mean, prior to joining Lighthouse, my extent of going to North Dakota had been going to a wedding for a former trainee that I had worked with, And so, yeah, I mean, it's a whole different world up there, but it's not any different. It's just, those guys, they were wheat producers up until the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, start throwing some soybeans in the rotations. And now, I mean, the majority of what we merchandise in a given year for our group were, corn.
Yeah. Now they have piles of corn everywhere.
Yeah, we have piles of corn, and like
Thanks, seed genetics.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you take. I got guys in near the Canadian border this year picking 170 bushel farm averages.
And their rent is
$65.
65 to 80
Oh
bucks
my
an acre. Now the one thing that you will find about the Dakotas is you don't get the blessing of 2 feet of topsoil and perfectly timed weather every year. There's always challenges. Mm-hmm. We had the early freeze in 20, the drought in 21. Too many inches of rain turns you into just a giant floodplain up there. I do tell people, I say, if Iowa was not so fast on getting their drain tile put in, and NRCS would have been like they are in North Dakota today. I mean, I think, North Dakota, in areas could rival productive capacity of Iowa just with the soils that they have. I mean, relative to their, northerly climate. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you take the Red River Valley, like Fargo up to Grand Forks. I mean, that's some of the most productive ground in the world outside of the central, U.S.
Yeah.
People just kind of, almost forget about it up there, but it's quite the breadbasket.
Yeah.
So.
We know some other people that have gone up there for business, and it just seems like it's, like you said, early 2000s, started growing corn. It's kind of like the Wild West in a sense of like, it was just undiscovered potential.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why most of my clients are up there, because, the risk management space to help guys understand how to properly merchandise corn and beans and everything. I mean, literally every time you turn around, there's a guy asking for help because there's just nobody up there that understands how the environment up there works, and also has the wherewithal to be up there. A lot of guys they see a irrigated corn farmer in Nebraska, but there's 17 advisors that are trying to go get that business, and our business has grown completely by referral to this point. I mean, that's been the crazy part. Is, I mean, we don't advertise to speak of in terms of like our professional farm marketing programs.
Okay. So North Dakota's awesome. Grow a crap ton of corn when they get
way
decent
better than
weather.
Nebraska.
It is way better. I'll give you that. I'll give you that now. They're talking to Nebraska too. We can't win here. We're here to understand grain merchandising. You guys said that you are the grain merchandiser for the farmer. Is that am I saying that right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good commodity brokers out there, and I use, I think you got to differentiate that a little bit. I mean, we have futures accounts that we use for guys, but I mean, there's a lot of difference. Like if you have a $5 corn hedge on, the decisions you make before you turn that into a cash contract, can definitely, that could be a $6 corn contract, that could be a $6 cash contract, that could be a $4 corn contract, depending on the decisions you make. And a lot of that has to do with the merchandising piece and understanding all the intricacies of, are you going to store it? What are the spreads doing? Oh, we're in an inverted market. Let's pitch this stuff. High interest rate market. Okay, we don't, carrying costs are just going to eat us up here. Logistics, space constraints, all those pieces that, like I always say, anybody can tell you to sell $5 corn, but it's the final outcome in the cash side that determines how well that really is going to work out for a producer. And merchandising is, it's the buying and selling of the grain. And in our business, where we're the actual merchant, you're selling grain to us, we're a pseudo on paper elevator, and then we're working with the customer to sell to the end user, ethanol plant, flour mill, canola crusher, whoever it is, we can look across the whole space. We physically trade it. We actually have an individual that all he does is just work on the sales side with all the different, end users that we're working with, and basically works with all the farm merchants, says, okay, we got a bunch of grain that needs to move here for this time frame. What's our thoughts? Strategize on where we think basis is going. What needs to be moved. Is it time to pull the trigger? Should we wait and all that?
So because you guys have the finger on the pulse of all the end users, which a farmer could never, have the capacity to do that, right? Like you guys know what they want. You feel like you can negotiate better deals?
To some extent, and I think also too, you just get the pulse of, you get the comment from a guy of, hey, I need to cover a half train of corn, here, and
A farmer said that I need to cover half.
Well, no. An elevator will be like, and a lot of,
Gotcha.
it's kind of interesting as you work in the new neighborhood. Some commercials are like, well, what are you up to? Because there have been some models, and I won't mention names, but I think you guys probably know some of the, guys that have started up trying to do, I wouldn't say what we do, but, have tried to do the kind of this national farm marketing model or whatever, and have not, really succeeded because they saw him as a competitor. We're not a competitor. I mean, we're very transparent. We're working with this guy. He wants, this is part of how we market for these guys. And you just get a better feel for the market. You're like, hey, looks like, P&W corn bids on shuttles are starting to break. Okay, we got some corn that we were going to need to move. Well, let's get the trigger pulled. Let's get that corn sold to this elevator where this is going to go. Or, hey, we're watching bean basis in central Iowa start heating up, and we know it's going to start flowing back because we know that, you can start justifying loading trains out of North Dakota with beans and sending them down to the southeast. It's all those different pieces. Like you said, as much as a producer wants to be involved, you can't, unless you want that to be your job, which most producers don't. Mm-hmm. They just, it's, I think that's where our model shines, is because we're in it every day.
Yeah, I was talking the other day. It's like I would literally have to just hire everything out, that I'm doing now. I'd have to have a guy sitting in the tractor and a guy choring hogs and a guy sitting in the truck, and so I could focus on this.
Right.
And then I could be good. I know I could be. Yeah. But I'm also smart enough to know I'm not good with the 1/10 of of my time that I give it.
Right.
So,
right. And I mean, not that our scale, we're not. Just because we have let's just say we got 500,000 corn and we want to go to a certain destination, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the bid better. Maybe at times we will. Usually volume speaks a little bit more, but it's, for a producer, you might have 20 shots to sell your cash grain throughout the year. Well, you're not going to go all in on one sale and, man, I hope I hit it the best, because then that goes back to the emotion, what did I leave on the table piece. Whereas when you're dealing with all these bushels, you can, move them around between marketplaces as guys need, and just, I mean, biggest thing for us is just averaging into a good number.
Right. And you say you have it right on your website. I like that. I pulled it up. You guys say what your average was. Like the very first thing.
Yeah.
What you sold for this last year.
Yeah, and I mean that's if all things are perfect, everybody pulls the trigger a little differently, but
right, we could have a place to measure.
Yeah, and that alludes to that. So in the last about 2 years, Dave, our founder, one thing we've said is, like you talked earlier, emotion is same with me. I mean, on the producer side, it's like. Okay, gosh, $6 corn, but if it goes to $7, I'm leaving money on the table. It's cutthroat business. What happens if my neighbor gets $7? Then he can pay more in rent, whatever.
Right.
From that side. So we introduced, so we call it Hedge Beacon now, but basically what it is a couple text signals that we basically weight in a small algorithm, and all it does is just, this is a good time to buy. So if you're a hog guy, hey, buy signal and soybean meal. Let's go to the mill and get some soybean meal bought. Now, and then neutral, probably don't need to do anything. And then, true sell signal. You hit your June 16th. Everybody's like, oh man, this crop's going to die. It's 650 futures. And you're like, gosh, what happens if it goes to 7? Mm-hmm. We got a sell signal. It's like, well, we're going to do something today. What we decide to do. And the great part about it too is, I mean, it's transformed how we've done stuff on our business, because you just don't get it. You don't get as emotional anymore. I mean, you walked into the WASDE report last week. We had a sell signal on beans. We were fairly neutral on corn. We were kind of like, well, probably going to be a little bearish bean report. Corn number probably shapes up to be neutral to bearish. Lo and behold, we found some more beans, whatever, and it just helps. It honestly just keeps you out of the road ditches,
Right.
And that's transformed our business and just helping guys out. And now we've kind of started pushing that as just a standalone product for a guy, because it can hook into anything you want, whether you're just a cash seller at the local elevator, or I've got a friend I work with, and they have a small hog herd in Nebraska, and they were, they said, we're never going to pick the bottom, but we looked at signals like, man, meal's in a nearby, so we probably should get a couple quarters of meal coverage locked up, and they did that, 30 days ago, and pretty happy that they did.
Yeah,
so,
no kidding. Yeah.
So, so many guys get, and for us too, it's, I probably read, one or two market commentary letters a week, or just, some highlights from different guys that we like to follow, just that are well thought out. But I mean, you can get so bombarded with information.
Yes.
This guy's got this thought, this guy's got that thought, or we think that the South American crop's burning up and we're going to 20 and whatever. And this just, like you said, just take the emotion out of it. And, you may, you're probably not going to go all in on every signal, but you're like,
Right.
Hey, if I'm at the top of the range, this probably isn't going to hurt me too bad in the long run.
It's crazy though, because that's what farmers like, because we might not be paying attention. So if we get a look and see it's down 40
something
cents,
catches your attention,
they kind of want to go, why? Instead
Right.
of just being like, well, that sucked.
Yeah, and the thing too, I mean, with the advent of all this money flow anymore, I mean, there are times where you're just like, why did we drop 80 cents today? I mean, there just was no reason other than just money flow at times. But then, for our instance, hey, our price signals went down to a nearby. Well, if there's one thing that we're assuredly doing today is we're not selling beans today, or
Right.
something like that. So
I mean, I feel bad since Dave's not here. He would be geeking out over AI in an algo. So I do have to ask a Dave question. You got an algorithm that's, selling buy or telling you to buy or sell. Is that like set up to have a certain amount per year, or is it telling you a certain amount of bushels, or just kind of giving you?
I mean, like
direction?
if you look at our site today, I think we would say we're, if you looked at the results, that's like that would account for like a 65% ish of total crop. Had guys acted on those signals. We just sold some more beans here the other day on this like 1380, 1390 run here, and. So we're about 75% sold as it stands today. And the one thing too is, we're very, very big proponents of let's set your futures and then let's figure out where basis needs to be going after the fact. Usually that, I mean, there are guys that, you might have elevator beans in the elevator you got no choice on, but I mean, if it's stuff in the bin, we're all about let's set our futures. Usually the futures and the basis piece are usually two separate conversations on 2 different days.
Yeah. So I'll just read the results for your 2023 Hedge Beacon sell rec results. You're at 633 on corn, 1408 on soybeans, 964 on wheat. Is that for 23 crop? Is that 2023 Hedge Beacon, or is that?
Yeah, so that would be like basis, the Dees or Nove beans or the Sep wheat.
That's dang good on corn. That's like the high.
Well, yeah, I mean, we scaled in last winter, I mean, on a couple, deals, and then, I mean, June rolled around and we had the stuff.
And it's probably close on soybeans too.
Yeah, I mean, I think at 1450 we topped out there at 1 or 14, and you had some early opportunities up around 1450. I think 14 and a quarter was kind of that summer move, but are we going to be that perfect every year? And obviously you have to act on those at the days, but that's been transformative for our business too, because I mean, okay, now, I mean, we had guys 60 now with the adage of, we had a lot of 140 APH corn ground this year that's going 200 in North Dakota. So we have to do some catch-up hedging for guys. But, I mean, those original APH bushels were, getting hedged, 60, 70% were hedged coming in harvest this year. And sure feels a lot better than selling $4 corn off the combine in some of these areas.
Right.
So with being in on it, now that we're 25-ish minutes into this, what's your long-range gut tell you?
Continued volatility. I do think, we're in a transition period as much as the producer doesn't want to think about it. But, I mean, we've been supply short for going on 3 years now. And, assuming the South American crop on the bean side doesn't go too much further down the road, we're still growing the world bean balance sheet. The South American bean issue as it stands today is probably actually a little more transformative for the corn balance sheet as it kicks out second crop corn and possibly adds less. They had a huge safrinha crop last year, and so obviously impacted our corn exports here on the U.S. side, and even to this day it is. If they back down on their second crop corn acres, then that's gives us some ability to probably extend our export season and going into next year. I mean, this isn't going to be an instant thing, but there's going to be stuff 12 months down the road from that side. But overall, I mean, our opinion, we're back into more bare carry markets. You look at carry structures in the bean and corn futures markets today, both big carries. And that's indicative of a crop that the market's saying, I want it later, not now. And basis is going to have to do some work in areas to move from supply shortages to supply positive areas. I know I was talking to one of our contacts at Stone, and I mean, it sounds like there's been actually some corn trains trading out of the Dakotas down to Cedar Rapids already for this year.
Really?
Yeah. So you won't have a runaway corn basis truck basis corn market in Iowa this year because the Dakotas will just smother you with corn for the rest of the season.
Yeah, because they'll go 400 miles.
Or we'll just bring it on a shuttle and
they don't care.
And yeah, so that's the great part about the grain market is, I mean, it always figures out a way to handle a supply shortfall wherever it is.
That's the job of basis, right?
Yeah.
So get it to where it needs to be. So.
Yep. It's not it's not just a conspiracy that the elevators come up with.
So you obviously you help your customers where to market their grain, outlets. You have a Hedge Beacon tool that with sell signals. What are you doing to help manage the risk, like in the futures and things of that nature?
So, I mean, for us, I mean, we do a little bit of futures and option business for guys, but honestly, in the last 2 years, most everything's just, cash contracts in our books, and then it's just a function of let's just make sure we're selling when we should be selling, and, then we're not talking about, hey, I need to re-own half my corn crop that I had to haul to town because I didn't have a plan for it.
So you don't focus on that as much?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's a few guys but
like you can.
What's that?
But you can.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I mean, but sometimes you kind of throw good money after bad, especially if if your opinion on the market is, hey, corn's probably trading a 470 to 520 range. Well, trying to buy a call structure or something like that, you got to spend 20 cents just to get into it. So what's the point? And, especially when you have, at least like our guys this year, you have huge good crops. It's like, who cares if you're raising 60 bushel above APH if you got to spot a few loads into town and move on with life. I mean, you're just making huge money this year, and it's not worth, doing, when it really comes down to it, grain marketing, I know everybody says it's easy, and the producer would argue otherwise, but it really just have a bit of a plan, have some thoughts on where you want some price points, know what your numbers are. I mean, that's the big thing. Guys are always like, well, I can't sell it for this, and don't get me wrong, I know your yield can be 200, it could be 250, and that determines a lot of things, but we know if we sell 550 new crop corn for 200 bushel an acre corn, it's probably at least going to break us even. Well, how we decide to do that, whether it's maybe a min-max contract or an straight HCA, that all changes things a little bit, but it really just is a few key decisions throughout the year. And I think like this year we felt like, man, we just made 4 or 5 good key decisions for guys throughout the year. And really, I mean, we're kind of on the easy button now. It's just, how do we get this stuff executed into town and try to get a basis level that just isn't so abhorrent that you
Yeah.
to cry about it. So
What I can't remember who said it, but what I'm going to try to do on my 2024 crop, it was too late on the 23 crop, was like everyone says, know your numbers, know your break even, but that's a moving number, right? Like if you sell above your break even, then your break even goes lower,
yeah,
right? On every load in every market. So like there's a point that break even does get to zero if you did good.
Right, the bonus bushels, so to speak, and and that's one thing we do with our guys is we have a risk management tracking software that we use. So we put hey, this is acres of corn, this is our projected yield. Some guys don't even know their numbers, but we've kind of worked up generic break evens that, quite frankly, they flex pretty good. The numbers will. Obviously, more dollars for a bigger APH crop in the southeast part of North Dakota versus a smaller APH crop in the northwest. But, it gives us a good enough ballpark that guys are like, well, I just can't sell it. And you're like, well, I don't know all your numbers, but I can pretty much assure that this number is going to be $100 an acre profit,
Yeah.
And it's like, you haven't done anything. Let's pull the trigger on something, and.
Because I didn't fight Corey, but I discussed with Corey during the first time that he shared that philosophy with me that your break even can go to zero. I was like, no, there's still a cost per bushel. So it's an interesting concept that you can take the profit from one sale to lower your cost of production on the rest of your sales. If you just sold everything at your break even as that went down, you do end up with 0 bushels left, but 0 profit too.
Yes.
Yeah. So the goal is to get your break even to 0, still having your bonus bushels.
Yeah, but if you were at $4.50 and the corn went to $7,
Correct.
Like it did, and you sold everything for $7 and your break even was $4.50, like you get to 0 pretty quick.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing forward marketing 8 years out of 10 is your best life decision. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get caught in the 2021, big China, big moves, stuff like that, but the guys that at least that we work with that just are consistent. I mean, we got a customer that they'll be 3 years out on corn every year. I mean, regardless of wherever. And yeah, that didn't look very fun, a year and a half ago. But now he's got 25 corn locked up at 550, 550. But I don't know, somewhere in there. But as long as you're just consistent in what you're doing and forward selling that, I mean, that's just going to be your better life decision generally. Obviously, for a Nebraska guy, it's a little easier because we have that magical thing called irrigation, so it's a lot easier to get more aggressively sold into those lanes. The guys in the east with rain-fed crops, it's a little more challenging, but there's structures that you can do that take some of that risk away in terms of, hey, let's get a floor here, but not commit ourselves on.
So how many of your top tier clients are scheduling sales around when bills are due, or how many of them are scheduling bills due around the time of year they want to be making grain sales?
Really none. I mean, you got rent due in the fall, you got fertilizer prepay, you got, those things that guys are managing. But I guess our point in all of this is if you're doing a good, North Dakota for years, soybeans off the combine right to town get sold. I mean, there's just really no reason to carry beans up there. There will be now with these new processing plants that will be coming online here this year and next. But again, it costs you 9 cents a month to carry it. Well, do you really want to? Most guys, I think when they start with us, maybe they have that concern. But I mean, those are conversations we're having with guys like, hey, I got a land payment due at the end of the year. Well, let's make sure we've got being sold into town, or let's make sure we got a corn sale before the first of the year that we can turn into cash. So I shouldn't say there's not any of that, but I mean, let's make the right marketing decision when we look at futures, and then when we need to set basis, because wheat, everybody hates wheat everywhere pretty much, but consistently every year in North Dakota, spring wheat 85 90 under harvest, you'll start booking 20 under basis for March, about now till the first of the year. I mean, almost year in and year out, 60-cent basis improvement. You play your futures right, I mean, that's huge money every year. And so, yeah, you got guys that it's a lot easier to say I got a plan to do that than the guy that just puts it in the bin and then doesn't act on it. And then next July, he's like, oh, I should probably move this wheat before I start harvesting my next crop or whatever.
Right. Because when you are forward contracting actively, planning for that fall cash rent is something that you can do. Like I said, sold right out of the field, good to go. But I've had conversations with people that have said, nope, I have my end of year land payment. I don't want that due until March. So then when they set up a new bill, bought a new combine, I don't want to set up my combine payment to be 1 year from today. Can we set that up to be a June payment?
Right.
To try and coincide with better markets.
Right.
That fit into their overall marketing plan. So I didn't know if any of your clients.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but I think especially after the last couple of years, I think you're almost on the, you're on the positive side of that working capital cash flow model. So you're hopefully not deep into your line of credit and needing that money to make that bill. It's, hey, maybe I finally had to dip in the line of credit because I did get stuff sold out forward. I did get that plan made. Had the conversation with the guy yesterday. I mean, a bunch of $6 new crop corn hedges, and he's like, basis was okay for Jan, Feb, March, but we're just like, let's just turn it into cash. Why do we need to stare at it? Let's put it in the bank. It's either we're line of credit's paid down, or hey, we're earning some interest on this until we need to utilize it. Now, obviously, interest rates have, that's been one big thing in the last year and a half, and we started harping on it last spring to guys that, be cautious of what you got, because we're going from 4.5% operating lines to 8.5%, 9% operating lines. And I don't think until guys got that, interest due bill here this fall, that it kind of dawned on them what it's truly taking to finance some of these operations.
Well, there's a lot of guys that are 35 to 45 years old that haven't been in and younger. It hasn't been into a high interest, and including myself. And it eats you away.
Oh yeah,
slowly.
And it's like, okay, like I discussion with a guy yesterday, and I was like, hey, I got a bunch of overrun corn. We could put in a bag. What do we need to do? And it was like, well, it's going to cost you 20 cents, bag in, out. You got a little extra freight to bring it back into the farm. And, finally just landed on, hey, let's just, hey, we found a decent basis selling some delivered corn. Let's just move it to town and be done with it.
Yeah.
Roll some hedges back and turn it into cash, because
then you can put that money to work for you.
Exactly. And I think that's a big mentality shift that if guys haven't hit on it yet within the next 6 months, especially if guys maybe didn't do a great job marketing for this year's crop. I mean, they're going to start chewing up working capital real quick, and it's going to feel, come the spring, it's going to feel plenty tight on some of this stuff. Now, hopefully you have the few seed guys offering some 0% financing and stuff like that, which
I can tell you, yes, there's 0%, but what moved was the discounts. It's not. I mean, you're getting screwed either way.
Yeah.
Right. There's always a side to that that you don't keep track of. But
it sounds good when you say zero.
Sounds good, but
I was just trying to find a meme that I saw the other day about, it was comparing the wife's coffee a day addiction to carrying an operating balance now that interest rates at 9%. So I just did the math to try and back into it. It's $25 a day for every $100,000 borrowed at 9%.
Yep.
So your $6 coffee, your whatever dollar coffee, really isn't that expensive compared to, could we have made a marketing decision to drop $100,000 off our line of credit?
Yeah.
Saves you $25 a day.
Yeah. And just staring at stuff in the bin. I mean, that's going to be frustrating for guys, because on one hand you're looking at watching that interest rate. I don't know if it's like watching a stockbroker account, but every day you log in and look at your line of credit interest rate balance going up like it does, you're like, gosh, what can I do to knock this thing down? And it's like, hey, let's just turn this to cash, and within the reason of what we think smart marketing we should be doing on it. But
you throw the interest and then like a 25-cent down market day, and like we have all of our grain in like a harvest profit, like that, and then you have all of the grain, and then you see how much you lost that day, and then you throw interest on top of it, like, oh.
yeah. You just, it's so that, you take this bear market, you take this interest rate environment. I mean, there's it's going to be, if we plant average corn acres and South America doesn't end up in too bad of a spot, I mean, if we have 450 corn next fall or less and, $10 beans, I mean, that's not a lot of fun on any front, especially if you load it up on some $14,000 an acre, Iowa dirt in the last 5 years, and or I guess for that matter, the $17,000 an acre northern North Dakota dirt that sold
saw that
2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, North Dakota record.
Wow. So are you guys? You have to be big proponents of grain bins, though.
Oh yeah, honestly, I mean, and I've been even when I was in the commercial world, the guys were like, "What can I do better?" And it's like, build a bin. We need to merchandise it correctly. I mean, don't just throw grain in there with no plan. But
yeah,
I mean, honestly, if we have new clients that are wondering about wanting to sign up with us, it's like, what % do you store? Because there's not the leverage and value in just selling stuff across the scale at harvest. I mean, there's for our business. I mean, we can help you at that point.
It's got to be the worst time to sell.
Yeah, it's
right?
the worst time to sell, generally speaking. And we can tell you to sell good futures, but you might be leaving 30, 40 cents on the table. And especially like in North Dakota, the good part is those guys have always, they're so far from destination markets. I mean, used to be there wasn't even ethanol plants up there, so you had shuttle loaders, or you trucked it to Montana or, Canada, and that was your market outlet. And so those guys up there honestly are probably better prepared for carry bear markets than, some guys in, the center U.S. that rely on the elevator for half of their handling capacity and have to haul it all to town. And
maybe that's why I see these trucks going through here, central Iowa, that are from North Dakota, South Dakota. Just put it on wheels, ship it.
Boy, it seems like it would just eat up everything, but
I don't even like sitting in line for an hour and a half, let alone know that I've got more than an hour and a half
there's some
before I
guys
even get there.
that grow barley up there that go down to like Anheuser-Busch.
we have, like spring wheat. I mean, we'll take wheat into the cities. We can go to Omaha with it at times on some of that stuff. The good part about all that is that's all, third party, just over the road truckers. So, and that's another service that we help guys with is fob the farm trucking, because do you want to sit in line at the ethanol plant for 3 hours? No, that's probably not, you look at what do you value your time at? I mean, if I'm worth $85 an hour as managing my operation, I can go pay a guy $20 an hour or $25 an hour to go sit in a truck line. I'm still netting myself better as an operator.
Right.
And that's the thing that we've tried to, tell the guys is, there's times, hey, I'm 10 miles, we sold the local elevator and it's 10 miles away and I can go slam 40 loads in 2 days. That's a whole different world. But I mean,
right.
you get going down the road here, it's like, you really shouldn't. I mean, we have a few guys that don't even hardly own any trucks. They just rely on third-party carriers to empty the farm out after harvest is done.
Yep. Well, we're getting pretty long in the tooth here, and I haven't read anything except your last name off of Tanner's sheet here. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then, Tanner, it's your job to get whatever else we need through here, before you want to wrap it up. Because I'll go all day, or at least until 2 more hours. But I'm generally curious. I mean, we've talked about all this good stuff that you do for your clients. How do you communicate that with them? Is it a daily newsletter, weekly newsletter? Is it a text? Is it a call?
Generally, if you're a professional merchandising client, which would be our quote unquote full service client, you're going to have one of the farm marketers that you're working with, and they're your main point of contact. You're probably talking to them once every week to 10 days. Mostly try to get at least one phone call, because so much of the minutia of what we talk about is texting is great, and like, hey, we need to make a quick decision. That's a fine way to do that. But sometimes you're talking about 4 different options. You can make a phone call and make it a 5-minute phone call that would have been a 40-minute text string that you still are probably unclear on what.
Well, we did learn that a thumbs up emoji in a text message just does count as
contract confirmation.
Really?
Yeah. At least according to the Canadians. So, but so I mean those are primary methods. Dave sends out a weekly just kind of recap, and honestly, it's for our sake too, because we'll just collect our thoughts about what the market did this week, what, compared to some historical years, what we think may be coming down the line. And then like with our Hedge Beacon product, we send out basically just a daily quick, hey, price signal on corn this morning's 52. It's a neutral signal. Probably don't need to do anything, and move on with life. If we get into a sell signal on a crop, we'll send a quick alert out to guys so they're at least aware, and then try to get around to them, relatively quickly if we think we need to act on that in a short order to, get something done on that.
Is there anybody that just goes? Hey,
You
look,
said you had one more question.
This is an extension. This is an extension of that. Is there anybody that just goes, look, I'm going to produce like 400,000 bushel of corn, 200,000 bushel of wheat, whatever. You guys do it.
No, I mean, nobody, and I don't want guys to be that way. I want them to be engaged too, because, it's like, well, I wouldn't have done it this way and that way. But, our whole mantra is let's take these 30, 40, 50, 60-minute thought processes of what we should be doing, and let's condense it to a 5-minute convo with here's your here's your three options. I think this would be your best decision, but if you want to go another direction, let's go with that. And honestly, for the guys that worked with us 5-6 years, it's almost to that point. It's just a huge trust factor of, they'll still give you the final okay, but they know that you're working on their behalf. So when you recommend something, guys always get suspicious. Hey, the elevator's asking about corn beds. What's up their sleeve? What do they see coming? And on our side, it's, hey, our bias is we want to make this decision. I think it's time to make that decision. Let's just move on and keep trucking, because the farmers are pruning along.
Yeah,
guys get so focused on this front end or you make one bad marketing decision, it's just paralysis, and it's like you got 24, 25, 26. You got hopefully 20, 30 more years of crops you're going to be selling, and this is one 5,000 bushel decision that maybe didn't quite go how you wanted, but let's move on with life.
We don't like to lose.
No.
We do have a lot of young listeners that, we have all ages of listeners.
Yep.
And some aren't going to change. They're not going to call you. They're not going to look you up and switch. Some are in that open and exploring stage. And then we have some who will tell you and email us saying that they want episodes like this because they want to learn more.
Yep.
What are good educational resources? How can our listeners learn more? It doesn't have to be just Lighthouse. But
Yeah, no, and I saw that kind of on our pre-interview cheat sheet, and I thought, obviously you can Google anything. Obviously, buyer beware on probably the advice. Yeah. One thing as I got to thinking about it too is Center for Farm Financial Management in Minnesota. I think that's I was actually involved with it in Nebraska when I was in college on the extension side, but they have what they call winning the game, and just a very straightforward, it's a game, but in the sense of, hey, here's some decision points on forward marketing grain, running through scenarios and, giving you the ups and downs and the options of different things. And I think I believe it's Ed Ussett, at least led that at one point. I don't know if he's still involved with that, but then it also has a good, just general grain marketing book that, pretty simple, but this isn't rocket science either. It's just let's lay out the scenarios. And so I think that's one area to look at. I know all these land grants have generally, I would say KSU, Illinois, Nebraska, all have some decent resources that relates to just,
Is he purposely not saying Iowa State?
Yes,
I was just waiting.
The
for
ag
it.
manager.
I was gonna,
hey,
ag decision maker.
Ag decision maker. Yes, yes. And I believe actually, Iowa State and Minnesota were involved both in that endeavor.
I'm sure Iowa State led it.
Hey, he hasn't said Nebraska, so.
But yeah, I mean, all these land grants. I mean, there's always a policy, an expert, and that gets you the basics. As we've discussed too, I mean, there's a lot of minutia that you either become a student of it or, not to be biased, but you probably just need to find somebody to help you that you trust. And that can look a lot of different ways, whether it's a producer down the road that's willing to share what they're up to, professional merchandising service, a broker. I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. I think it's just how guys want it to fit into their operations. So,
Well, the last one that I have before the payoff question is, besides taking emotion out of decisions and besides having a plan, what are your top tier clients doing differently that's making them successful? Because I know those are going to be the crutch answers. You know, they're doing those two things.
yeah.
But what else?
You know, I think, you know, not getting paralyzed by a marketing decision. I mean, you know, like I said earlier, you got plenty of grain to sell every year, generally speaking. Now there's certain years of, you know, natural disaster of some sort may curtail that, but you're perennial long, and getting hung up on one decision that you didn't like and then trying to fight that for the rest of the year. I mean, it's just kind of like a bad stock trade or a bad futures trade. You know, if it's going south on you, just cut tail and move on, and, you know, don't lose sight, because you could say, man, I didn't do a great job on the 23 crop, but okay, there's still opportunities on the 24 crop. Don't forget about that, and you know, start making some decisions, and, you know, keep marching forward. I think that's, for our guys, that's the guys that, you know, just being consistent. Okay, we made our decision, let's move on. We aren't going to dwell on whatever it was, and, you know, hopefully it was a fairly successful decision. If it wasn't, it's hopefully 1 out of 10 that is not successful versus is. So
It's good.
You didn't. We didn't talk about livestock besides the one comment about meal. You guys do livestock too, right?
we don't hold ourselves as livestock experts by any stretch. We do have Hedge Beacon price signals. You know, personally, like I said, I feed a few cattle. Dave, our president, he actually feeds some cattle too, and fairly extensive user of those price signals on the hog, feeder cattle, live cattle market. So, you know, that's a whole. If there's one thing I've learned, you know, I tried to dip my toe in that a little bit a previous job, but, you know, trying to be an expert in grain and meats is just, it's two whole different worlds of how, you know, those markets act, and you know, certainly saw that in like cattle market in the last week and a half, and you know, funds moving around kind of abhorrently to what everybody thought fundamentally should be happening and stuff like that. So, and certainly for the poor hog producer out there today that not looking at, hasn't had a great last 10 months, and certainly the next 12 look challenging. You know, it's more about, okay, well, let's make sure we're buying our inputs right, and, you know, just not, you know, walking the little things and making sure we're not making mistakes there. So
Good. Well, the payoff question we've asked all of our listeners this fall is, what do you enjoy most about working with farmers? Or since you do a bit of it yourself, what do you enjoy most about being a farmer?
I think, you know, just working with producers, it's just like working with any other customer, but everybody has their unique stories, unique operations. Nobody's the same. Personalities, I mean, my gosh, there's everything from the high-strung super operator to the laid-back guy that, you know, it's fun just getting to hear guys' stories, and especially as you build relationships with them through the years, it's, you know, you get to know about their family and their background and how many generations they've been around or whatever. And, you know, it's honestly, that's probably the funnest part of, you know, just, and then helping guys be successful on top of it. I mean, it's been real fun to watch some operators that, you know, started with us that probably were a little on the ropes at times. We've helped them make some decent decisions, and now they're expanding and adding acres and stuff like that. So it's fun to see that come full circle too.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm going to do my best to summarize. And after I summarize what we chatted about today, let's get some contact information for you and Lighthouse, and Corey will challenge the listeners. So originally we started off here talking about what it's like to make marketing decisions and to look at a long-range outlook, not giving yourself grace and not being so hard on yourself for one small bad decision or for a decision that you feel could have been better. It might be beneficial to work with a team or somebody that's a professional that is in it daily, so you can have someone that focuses the majority of their time on paying attention to this, so you don't get caught up in the headlines. You don't get your text alert as the only source of information. You've got somebody that's diving deeper into what you have going on to take the emotion out of it. You want to make sure that we're not getting too much information, that you work with the people that you trust, that have good proven track records. You need to be able to know your numbers to begin with before you can make some of your decisions. So whether that's what your typical yield is, what your bills and due dates are, where your interest cost is going to run. We talked a little bit about that as well. We also learned that there's some resources. A lot of the land grant universities have information. We learned about Winning the Game that came from the Center for Farm Financial Management out of Minnesota. Also have Ag Decision Maker at Iowa State. Like I said, each one of those is going to have resources for you to help learn and do some more things there. But you can't beat yourself up. You're perennially long. You have the ability to grow the crop. But we can start making multi-year plans and scheduling to where the marketing can actually work for you. And we can learn and work with advisors such as Andrew here at Lighthouse to get some of those answers or at least options put forward to where we can make some educated decisions.
Yeah, certainly.
And before I do my challenge, I need to ask one more question.
Of course you do.
You're a lot in North Dakota, and you said you're working into South Dakota. Like, what is your appetite for, like, am I able to call you in Iowa?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be a bit judicious about where we're expanding to. Our biggest growth hurdle has just been finding, people that are good farm marketer help, quite frankly, that are in roles like mine. We're given that we're licensed bonded grain buyers. We have to, if we start doing business in Iowa, we got to be licensed and stuff. Certainly for areas that we maybe aren't ready to expand into, our Hedge Beacon product is a great just, hey, use this tool at least as how you're doing stuff today. Certainly if it's not quite a fit from the professional marketing side, but certainly we're willing to entertain any conversation from folks, and it's got to kind of be a right fit for us, but we're certainly love to just talk to people too. Okay. I mean, that's never not an option.
So you would have to hire a grain merchandiser in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we'd have to hire one in Iowa. I mean, it's just more we just know where we're at coming into like this year, and we already have enough, potential clients that we're like, okay, we're going to be about tapped out on stuff, but we'll continue to grow. We'll find people. It's just, maybe it's not this year, maybe it's next year, but certainly in the interim, here's a few tools that we're using that, is still going to help you out regardless. Yeah. So
okay, my challenge is to go to lighthousecommodities.com, and I say that because it's kind of a joke because Tanner had a completely different website pulled up at the beginning. Yeah. It had something to do with marketing. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
not the right site.
Lighthousecommodities.com, and Andrew, if people want to get a hold of you or call into the company, like what's the best way to?
Yeah, we have our contact information on our website, or generic phone number on there. My direct line is I think 701-516-8195. Guys can reach out there, certainly there's throw a number out there, give a call, and we'd love to chat with folks and just see what their challenges are on any front and see how we can help.
Yep, and their generic line is 701-419-0964. You can also email them at marketing@lighthousecommodities.com.
Perfect. Well, that's good. Listeners, we appreciate you. Andrew, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Thank you for coming. Remember to like, rate, review, share this podcast with your friends. And we welcome any and all of you North Dakota listeners.
Go ahead, do it. One more challenge.
Tell
me what I just want to stir the pot a little more. Tell me what your local, where you sell grain into, what does it cost you for an HTA for 2024 new crop?
There you go.
I want to know. Type it into the comments.
I love it. This is awesome. Thanks again for hanging out.
Appreciate the time, guys. It's been a joy, and get to bounce over to beautiful Iowa for a day, and can't beat that. So
awesome. And listeners, until next time, have a good one.